I'm your host, Tracy Dixon, transmitting to you from the All Fiction Podcast Studios. Thanks for tuning in to the Steeger Classic Pulp Podcast, presented by Steeger Books, the purveyors of quality facsimiles and reprints of classic pulp magazines and story anthologies. Need more pulp? Visit SteegerBooks.com. You'll find a nifty promo code in this episode's description. Remember to follow our shows so you don't miss a single episode. Following us and leaving us a comment helps your podcast provider find us and suggest our shows to other listeners. And please be sure to click that share button. We'd appreciate it. From the pages of the February 1949 issue of Rangeland Romances comes Tenderfoot at Love by Fay Davis.
Just between you and me, I get a real kick out of these old romance stories.
Can Marcie Rollins trust the arms that make her heart soar? Let's find out.
For Marcie Rollins of the Tumbling Tea, it was one of those days when trouble had started stacking up early. Very first thing, swinging out of her bunk along about dawn, she had found a tarantula snuggling itself nice and cozy in a toe of her boots. As much as she disliked having to squash a fat bug before breakfast, she'd done it. And next, she'd found a tear in her last pair of Levi's and had to patch it with red flannel. Then, just when she'd begun to hope the day was getting a little better, it suddenly got real bad and threw her. Hours ago, soon after finishing her kitchen chores, Marcie had headed out aboard Splash, her runtish Pinto. She was just easing along, lolling in the saddle, thinking how much empty space there was all around with not a single man in it, when the whole rangeland all at once flipped upside down. The sun-browned ground was gone below her and Splash's hoofs were kicking across the blue-white sky, she thought dizzily.
Why, that's funny. Splash never sprouted wings before.
She felt herself soaring faster than Splash, bursting out of the saddle, spinning over in the air like a flapjack. With a jolt, Marcie found herself lying flat on her back under the parching sun, feeling too shook up to move, while Splash pranced about nearby, whinnying indignantly. Considering the kind of day it had been so far, Marcie was relieved to find this nightmare turning into a pleasanter kind of dream, consisting of a most handsome face hovering very close to hers. His eyes were deep blue and full of merry lights. The brim of his fine black Stetson cast a shadow of intimate secrecy over her own tingling face. She could feel his arms around her, drawing her gently closer, and his lips warmly near. Sensitive, eager lips almost caressing hers now. Eyes closed, Marcie gave herself up to the bliss of her dream, yielded wholly to the delight of it, but only for a second. Suddenly she realized that this was certainly no flight of her imagination. Those hands on her back were strong and real. Her head was resting on an arm with muscles flexing tight. Her eyes snapped open again at a very real touch on her lips, and fireworks started going off inside her. In a burst of desperation, she scrambled to escape. Bracing herself in a sitting position a few yards away until the range stopped rocking all around her, she tried to throw a rope on herself.
Steady, girl, steady.
Her cheeks were fiery, her breath fast with the realization that she had missed a mighty big accident by a mighty narrow margin. Even though it would have been just about the happiest accident that had ever happened to her, she'd saved herself from it in the very nick of time.
My gosh! Do you usually start kissing a gal even before you know her name?
The stranger was sitting on his heels, laughing at her with his eyes.
Why, honey, you'd be just as kissable no matter what your name might be. I just couldn't help wanting to kiss a girl as pretty as you are. Especially when you drop right out of heaven and into my arms like that.
Marcie swallowed her heart and warned herself she'd better not listen to any of this windy kind of palaver. If she was really a smart girl who had learned her lesson, she'd stay mad. Hoisting herself to her feet, she frowned at the stranger. But her pulse reared up again in spite of all she could do to keep it reined in, and she wished he wasn't so slickly handsome.
Couldn't help where I lit once I'd started bouncing,
Marcie told him indignantly. It was the first time any horse had ever peeled her off. She looked around, saw that Splash was unhurt, and could find no explanation of their sudden spill.
I don't understand it either.
Guess you're just not old enough to have learned how to ride yet, baby. Better let me take your hand now so's I can get you safely back home to your mammy.
Marcie narrowed her flashing eyes, marched straight to him, and planted herself facing him with her fists on her slender hips. For one pulse-spurring moment, she thought he was going to draw her into his arms again. But the fighting set of her chin discouraged him. He stood there with a one-sided smile, listening.
There are a few things you gotta get straight, mister. First, I'm no kid. Second, I haven't got any mammy to be led home to, or any pappy either. They both died when I was a baby, 18 years ago.
To cover up this slight slip, she went on quickly.
Third, this ranch belongs to me and Grandpop Rollins, and since he's getting along in years, I run it. Fourth, we're short-handed and short-herded, and we're having a pretty tough time here. All on account of a slick-looking galoot like you who happened along a few months ago. Fifth, you're trespassing. So get right back on your pony and head on out before I get really good and riled up.
She was caught a little by surprise again by the complete change in his manner. The teasing smile on his lips became a quirk of sympathetic concern. The dancing sparkles in his eyes became a quiet, understanding glow as he said,
Why, ma'am, I surely beg your pardon if I offended your feelings, ma'am. I was just moseying through when I happened to see you standing your pony, all alone, back there by the pass. Just a little bitty gal, all alone and looking mighty sad, as if you were sort of miserable from missing somebody.
If I'm missing anything, it's a couple 100 head of beef that got stole from us. Anyhow, it's no business of yours.
Why, no, ma'am. I was riding on, ma'am, but then I saw your pinto take a header. Shucks, ma'am. When I saw you lying there, sort of unconscious and cuter than anything I ever saw in my whole life, why, I just couldn't help wanting to be sort of helpful, ma'am.
he added. Slyly, she thought.
Don't you feel a little grateful to me, ma'am?
Course I do. I still can't figure out what sent Splash and me tail over tin cup all of a sudden. But I'm grateful for any help you gave me, even if I didn't need it.
Marcie forced herself to add, almost reluctantly,
I'm okay now, so you can head on yonderly.
But maybe this is the very place I was heading for all along, ma'am. You're short-handed, you say, ma'am. Why then, I'm your huckleberry sure enough. I'm an old cowhand looking right now for a nice place to hunker down.
Marcie swallowed her breath. The thought of having him right here on the tumbling tee day in and day out, it made her feel as if she were spinning in midair all over again.
But we're too poor to hire another hand, as much as I'd like to. I mean, we just couldn't pay you, so...
But, ma'am, money isn't the most important thing to me. I'll gladly work for free for a while. You see, ma'am, this is just the kind of country I've been hunting high and low for. The way the honey-haired angels go flying around these parts, I can't help loving it.
Feeling suddenly dizzy again, Marcie thought she must have gone crazy because she heard herself saying,
That wouldn't be businesslike. I'm sorry, but that's final.
His hand came to her arm as she turned, gently holding her back.
Well, at least, ma'am, could you spare me a night's rest in your bunkhouse before I head on, leaving my future behind me?
Marcie drew in a slow, deep breath, well knowing that she could not refuse him this traditional hospitality. She merely nodded, her throat being all choked up, and saw his grin return. She was back in the saddle, on Splash, when he drew alongside her aboard a sleek black stallion. The enigmatic, teasing smile continued to play on his lips as they headed together toward the tumbling T ranch house. Marcie's heart was flip-flopping like an old flapjack every time she glanced at him.
Name's Stuart, ma'am. Rex Stuart, from over Pecos way.
I'm Marcella Rollins.
She said formally. Silently to herself, as they jogged along together, she did plenty of talking.
Watch sharp, Marcie.
She warned herself over and over.
Don't forget what Blackie Steever did to you, or you might get roped and burned all over again. And this time, lots worse.
All during supper, Rex Stewart's genial flow of table talk so enchanted Marcie that she almost forgot to eat. She noticed how the tumbling tea hands, Shorty and Clint and old Bob, seemed to think this stranger was a pretty fine gent and laughed uproariously at his jokes. Not so, however, Ed Wyer and Grandpop Rollins. Ed, Marcie's foreman, just grunted and gnawed on his food and frowned across the table at Marcie. Grandpop acted just as badly, Marcie thought. He was a testy old-timer, a little unsteady on his shanks now, but still lynx-eyed and sharp-witted and as quick as the snap of a bullwhip with his double-edged tongue. But Rex Stewart didn't seem to mind his crackling interjections at all.
Good night, ma'am. See you bright and early tomorrow morning, ma'am. About my new duties.
Ed and Grandpop stared at Marcie as the stranger moved toward the bunkhouse with Marcie's appreciative cowhands crowding around him. She swallowed a last dry lump of pie and lifted her chin to meet trouble head-on.
Marcie, danged if I can trust any man who's as doggone charming as all that,
Grandpop said with pepper in his voice.
It ain't natural. Means he's working on something, and most probably, it's you.
Trying to stay cool, Marcie felt her face heating up as Ed Wyer began harping on the same theme.
Grandpop's right, Marcie. This gent entirely too slicked up. Them clothes of his cost plenty of dinero. Where'd he get all that money just wandering around? Not honestly, I'll bet. Me? I'll like him better after he's moved on out of here tomorrow.
Ed stared harder at Marcie because she made no answer to that.
He is heading out right away, ain't he, Marcie? What did he mean when he said that about his new duties?
Grandpop followed up that question swiftly.
Marcie, did you go and hire that hombre?
I never meant to begin with, but he sort of persuaded me into it on the way in. You don't need to worry. About the money part, I mean. Because he's willing to work for just his board. No cash money.
They both stared at her in silent disbelief until Ed blurted,
That's exactly the way Blackie Steever wormed his way in here, Marcie, by offering to work without pay.
It's true, Marcie. My gosh, child. You ain't forgot how that low-down sidewinder of a Blackie insinuated hisself into your good graces, have you?
Marcie's face went white and chill. No, she hadn't forgotten. She would never in all her young life forget how dazzlingly Blackie Steever had appeared out of nowhere only a few months ago. Until then, she had felt life was pretty dull, and Blackie had brought her the rose-tinted excitement she'd yearned for. It hadn't lasted long, though, just long enough for Blackie to show his thievin' colors.
Now don't go off half-cocked, men. After all, we do need an extra hand, and it's not every day we can find one willing to work for free, practically.
If he's anything like the last one, he'll collect plenty for his trouble before he leaves here.
Marcie gazed at Ed levelly. Among all the men hereabouts, she guessed Ed was the best she could do. He was rather ordinary-looking and none too brilliant, but on the other hand, he was loyal and dependable. Something that hombres like Blackie and Rex, too, probably, could never be. He was the type that would get as pot-bellied as a kettle after a few years of married life. But anyway, he'd still be right here. As for his kisses, Marcie hadn't yet tried a sample, but she supposed they would be like the rest of him, sort of dusty and tired.
Marcie, there's one thing that's been worrying me. How come Splash shed you all of a sudden that way? Never spooked at anything before like that, did he?
Funny how that happened, all right. Think back to how you met up with Blackie Steever. Blackie fixed it so as it looked like Splash had gone wandering off. Was also something Splash never done before. Seemed mighty fortunate at the time the way Blackie turned up when you were stranded so bad. You know now he'd chased your pony away when you weren't looking, just so's he could make you feel grateful.
So, how do you know Rex didn't pull a trick on you this time, just the way Blackie did it before?
Marcie pushed her chair back and stood up with an air of finality.
You two are just a couple of suspicious, gossipy old women. I'll show you how I've learned my lesson. I'll keep a hobble on this hombre, all right?
She marched out into the kitchen, feeling not quite as self-confident as all that. And as she thought it over, she began to squirm inwardly with an uneasiness that wouldn't let up. Finally, she made up her mind to check for herself. She made sure that Ed and Grandpop, on the front porch hashing over their troubles, wouldn't notice her slipping out the back door. As she led Splash quietly out of the stable yard, she heard roars of merriment in the bunkhouse, her hands laughing over Rex Stewart's stories. She rode through the deepening dusk until she reached the spot, halfway out to Smuggler's Pass, where she had suddenly squirted out of her saddle and gone spinning through the clouds. She searched around diligently, and suddenly she found it. Her breath stopped at the sight. The base of a scrub oak was marked where the bark was freshly chafed off. Sick-hearted, Marcie realized at once what had done it. A rope. A rope stretched tight, secretly and invisibly across the trail. By Rex Stewart, of course, for the sneaky purpose of tripping Splash and sending Marcie spilling. It was true. Rex really had arranged a little trap for her. A falsely romantic meeting, just as Blackie had done before him. Next evening, with a full moon rising silvery bright over the rocky skyline of Smuggler's Pass, Marcie perched all alone on the ranch yard fence and felt as if it were the crumbling brink of a canyon. From the bunkhouse came the strumming of a guitar and the blended voices of the cowhands swinging a sweet and mournful tune that Rex Stewart was teaching them. Rex's voice richly led the rest. It seemed to be such a strong, honest voice, and all the while she knew its owner to be a scheming varmint that no really smart girl would ever trust for a minute. Marcie was still roosting lonesomely on the fence when a pony came up the ranch road with quiet urgency. Ed Wyer was in the saddle.
Marcie, I've been doing a little checking up on our fancy friend, Rex Stewart.
Marcie tightened her lips. She hadn't told either Ed or Grandpop about her slipping out last night. That one discovery had been enough to turn her heart into lead. She didn't want to hear anymore, but she couldn't tell Ed to go dive down a gopher hole. After all, he was acting in his boss's interest.
So Mr. Stewart comes from over Pecos way, does he? Reckon he does at that. He forgot to mention how fast he left, though. Marcie, the news has just hit town about a jailbreak over there.
I don't doubt that Mr. Rex Stewart has busted himself out of dozens of jails.
No, Marcie, I don't mean it just that way. It wasn't him in the Pecos lockup. The prisoner was somebody else. Man named Rourke, convicted of rustling and waiting to get strung up. Instead, he got sprung out of there one dark night last week by a two-gun masked man who stuck up the sheriff right in his own office. The gunslick Jasper who pulled off that job sounds mighty like our fine Mr. Stewart.
Trying hard not to believe it, Marcie began.
But why should he?
He was getting a partner of his out of trouble, of course. That shows he's a high-riding beef stealer himself, just the same as Blackie Steever was.
But then what's he doing around here now?
Must be that Rourke and the rest of the gang are hiding out there in the hills, waiting for a signal from their boss man to get to work. Mark my words, Marcie, they'll be cutting into our herd again some dark night soon.
Marcie set her chin.
We can't afford to lose any more beef, Ed. This time it would wipe us out,
she added, a pleading light in her eyes.
Surely that's plain enough even to him. Rex couldn't be so heartless.
It's no more'n you can expect from sneaking cattle thieves like Blackie Steever and Rex Stewart, especially with a sweet kid like you, Marcie. You can count on him being plenty mean and bold.
Bold, yes. No bolder than Marcie liked him, but it meant she must be doubly on guard. For example, the easy, audacious way that Rex Stuart was moving toward her in the moonlight, even now. Wyer grunted and immediately shuffled off. Stuart grinned at the sight of Ed ambling away and promptly perched on the fence close at Marcie's side.
This is surely the pleasantest berth I ever had, boss.
Marcie caught the gleam of his broad grin.
Can't help hoping I can work up to being your top man here.
His arm was stealing around Marcie's waist. Her sudden impulse was to throw herself against him, to cling and blurt out all her doubts in the hope that he could just laugh them out of existence. But she knew in advance that once his arms were tight around her, she would be entirely too eager to believe him.
Mr. Stuart,
She forced herself to say, pushing at his arm.
entertaining your boss in this way is not one of your unpaid duties.
I surely don't consider it work, ma'am.
His arm was tighter now, and his other hand had lifted to rest his fingertips gently on her cheek.
Why, I'd labor myself ragged all the rest of my life if it would earn me such happiness as this.
His words were a whisper, formed by his lips so near that hers could feel their warmth. Inwardly, she was howling at herself to stop him now before it was too late. If she should show herself to be the kind who let herself go loco over every handsome stranger who came along, why, she would hardly blame Ed for deciding she hadn't the proper makings of a wife. But the whisper at her lips was saying,
Just the nearness of you makes me forget what I came here to talk about, honey. Something about night sentry duty, maybe? Only with your lips so soft and close.
She stiffened. His words had done for her what her own resolve had failed to do. Reminded her sharply of her danger.
What about night sentry duty, Mr. Stuart?
You've got so few hands, honey, it's costing them a lot of sleep and cuts into their daytime work. It'd be easier on them by letting me take a turn at watching the pass.
It was exactly the same sly suggestion that Blackie Steeger had made to her. Here on this same fence, under a full moon like tonight's. And as a result of letting Blackie watch smugglers pass, the tumbling tea had lost that staggering amount of beef. She hopped off the fence.
You're too fast a worker, Mr. Stuart.
Compared with this smooth hombre, Blackie had just dawdled around.
You go right on sticking to routine chores, meaning cows entirely, mister, until I tell you different.
He slipped off the fence, gazing down at her. She hoped and feared he would just laugh at her rebuff, sweep her up in one powerful embrace, and if he did... But he didn't. Instead, he wagged his head and murmured,
It's going to be mighty hard, ma'am, keeping my mind on cattle from now on.
After he disappeared in the direction of the bunkhouse, she still stood in the dark with her fists clenched. Wyer shuffled back.
Look at this, Marcie. It's our new hand's fancy shaving kit. Brand new. Says his name's Rex Stuart, does he? Then how come the initials on this kit are C.F.?
Marcie couldn't speak. Either the skunk had stolen it, or he had passed himself off to her under a false name. It was an added blow, and she scarcely had time to absorb it before there was a stir in the dark, and Grandpop Rollins came hustling up on his wobbly shanks.
He's up to something right now, Marcie. I've been keeping an eye on him all evening, expecting something like this. Instead of hunkering down in his bunk like an honest wrangler would, he's heading out across the range on his hoss.
Same as Blackie did. He's got somebody hiding out there and he's sneaking news out to him. Come on, we gotta trail him.
Marcie knew she must find some kind of conclusive proof to convince herself that Rex Stuart was not the kind of man whose trail she could follow for life. While hastily saddling Splash and helping Grandpop to pull his cinch tight, she realized she was facing a moment of decision. Between Ed and Grandpop, Marcie headed out across the dark range. Keeping to the grassy stretches to quiet their horses' hooves, they faintly heard the rhythm of Stuart's in the dark distance ahead. Presently, they heard Stuart's stallion slow and stop. Easing on even more carefully, they drifted until suddenly Grandpop's hand swung across to grip Marcie's.
Get down. Easy. noticed a fire burning off ahead.
Her whole body throbbing with dread, Marcie swung to the ground. Grandpop led her, still holding onto her wrist, and Ed stumbled along behind. Marcie's widened eyes caught a glimpse of fire glow. She leaned forward to peer past a boulder. Clearly, she saw a little fire blazing halfway up the slope. Rex Stuart was sitting behind it, and beside him, his arm across her shoulders, sat a girl. The girl was as young as Marcie. Her hair gleamed raven black in the firelight. As the flames momentarily flared up, Marcie saw how beautiful she was. Prettier than Marcie, Marcie thought. Much prettier. Then the darkness closed in again, seeming to put its black brand on Marcie's heart forever. Grandpop Rollins shuffled across the ranch yard to whisper to Marcie, waiting in the silvery night.
Just as we feared, Marcie. That Jasper's heading out again tonight. This time, it looks like he means business.
Marcie narrowed her eyes and hitched at her Levi's.
So do I mean business. No cattle thief is going to cut another head of beef out of my herd if I can help it.
Or throw another loop around her heart, no matter how much she longed for it.
Is Ed keeping that sidewinder in sight, Grandpop?
He is, just like we planned it, Marcie. Seems to me, though, we're making a bad mistake, not calling the sheriff in on this deal.
Marcie's mouth was set as she patted the 6-gun snuggling against her thigh.
I won't need the sheriff's help tonight, Grandpop. This is one I'm going to handle myself.
Grandpop wagged his head uneasily and swung one spindly shank over his saddle.
I'll be right with you all the way, girl. Praying at every step.
Marcie sent Splash off at a quick jog, with Grandpop creaking quietly alongside. It was part of Marcie's strategy to leave her cowhands back in the bunkhouse. Their continued singing would make it seem that nobody on the Tumbling T suspected a visit from rustlers tonight. Marcie, Ed, and Grandpop hoped to balk the cattle thieves by bottling them up in Smuggler's Pass, through which Blackie Steever had rustled cattle. They pulled rein gently and waited. This stone-strewn clearing near the pass was a meeting place prearranged with Ed. After a while, they heard a soft hooting note on the breeze, Ed's signal. They pressed forward again and presently found him in the shadow of a rearing spire of rock.
No time to lose, Marcie. We gotta get the pass blocked pronto. They're heading toward it now.
Stirring the fallen shale as little as possible, Marcie swung into the main channel of the pass. Stationing herself now, she heard Ed fading off to one side and Grandpop to the other. Then, hand resting on her 6-gun, she peered into the misty gloom, listening sharp and waiting. The crash of a 6-gun close at Marcie's side left her stunned. It was not Ed who had fired. An invisible rider went clattering swiftly ahead. At the same time, Ed yipped and Grandpop let out a blood-curdling whoop. The yells were repeated by riders who had been crowding toward the pass. Riders now scattering under the confusion of the sudden attack. The pass became a nightmare of echoes as Marcie stood her ground, 6-gun gripped, resolved that not a single head of her herd or a single cattle thief should get past her. Flames sparked up, matches touching off pine knots. The torches rapidly increased in number, flaring thickest at the mouth of the pass. There, Marcie saw Rex Stuart and the beautiful, dark-haired girl. She expected to find Ed and Grandpop covering him, but instead Marcie saw the picture reversed. He had 2 6-guns in his fists, and he was leveling them at another man who was afoot and being held still by ropes whipped about his arms. Marcie stared with her mouth open. That second man was Blackie Steever. In her amazement, she hopped off Splash and ran closer to stare at him. Behind Blackie Steever were half a dozen men with their hands hoisted skyward, while other men, whom Marcie had never seen before, kept them carefully covered. Marcie turned again to stare unhappily at Rex and the girl at his elbow.
Marcie, I reckon it's high time for you to meet my Aunt Judy.
Marcie couldn't move as Judy came to her, smiling. kissed her cheek, and slipped an arm through hers.
You certainly have roped yourself a man, Marcie. The sorriest thing about being Clay's aunt is it cuts me out of the running.
Clay!
This was Ed Wyer grabbing a chance to blurt out an "I told you so."
See? Just like I told you, Marcie. His name ain't Rex after all. Nope, Marcie.
Clay confessed genially, looking not at all guilty.
Right name's Clay Farrell. Had to change it for the time being so's to work this little deal for Judy. You see, Judy owns the Rocking R over Pecos Way. Not long ago, this skunk of a Blackie Steever stole her cattle, same as he did to you.
Judy took up the story.
Blackie was in hiding because every sheriff for hundreds of miles around was looking for him. But one of Blackie's men, named Rourke, had landed in jail. Clay figured that if Rourke were cut loose, he'd head for Blackie's hiding place. So that's why Clay broke him out. Clay came here with Rourke and got in with Blackie's gang. I couldn't let myself be seen for fear of giving Clay away. And Clay hung around the tumbling T so he could look as innocent as possible while setting a trap for Blackie.
That was only one of the reasons I had for hanging around the tumbling T, Judy. The other reason was this.
He swept Marcie into his arms so suddenly that she completely lost her breath. Hoisted off her feet, with Clay's lips to hers, she felt herself spinning through the clouds just as she had when Splash had suddenly gone rolling. She had the delightful feeling of really soaring with the angels this time. Dropping back to her feet again, she drew in a deep breath and held her hat as if her leaping heart might bounce it right off her head.
Gee wowie, Grandpop. Blackie never did anything like that.
Tune in next time for another thrilling tale from the more than 30,000 yarns in the SteegerBooks.com catalog. This is Tracy Dixon signing off for now. Thanks for listening.